Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach and welcome to another player profile. But before we get into it, just a quick little plug. If you're listening to this one on my Facebook page or SuperCoach HQ, be sure to get along to my YouTube channel as well and give that a subscribe, and you'll get all the most up-to-date content via the YouTube channel. It all goes there first, and vice versa. If you're on the YouTube channel, then be sure to check out SuperCoach HQ. They got plenty of good stuff going on. And not just SuperCoach. If you like your BBL when that rolls around again and all that sort of content, then get stuck into that. But Pearce Hanley, very interesting, and I got around to the comments on a number of videos on Wednesday night, and Hanley certainly popped up a lot in terms of comments and wanting a profile on him, so I thought I'd definitely get to him as soon as I could. And he is very interesting, I must say. I can certainly see it from both sides of the fence, but I'll walk through a couple of stats and a few thoughts. 428k is what we're looking at, but the kicker is that he's a defender now and we can select him in our backline, which is very important. 29 years old, a wealth of experience in what is a pretty inexperienced Gold Coast side. So a few averages from Pearce over the journey. 2011 will start from, where he first sort of showed that he had ability to score and play the game, the Irishman. 82.6, then 90.7. 2013 and 2014, the big years in his prime. 95.7, 103.8. Then the last three seasons is something I'll focus on. 2015, 86.5 from 11 games. 2016, 86.7, 22 games. Makes the move to Gold Coast last year, just gets the 13 games out, 77.8. So it's clear that Pearce Hanley knows how to score. He's a beautiful ball user, seems to have a lot of time with the ball, makes good decisions. That's exactly what Gold Coast will be looking from him. Stuart Dew has already said that's what I like about him. That's why I want him to play midfield minutes. That's what really puts him on the radar. He's already been said that Pearce Hanley will get a fair bit of midfield time, given Ablett has gone and quite a number of sons over the years. So we've got to look at him. There's no doubt about that. He's the sort of guy who'll rack up more of your uncontested possessions, but he's a very smooth mover and the sort of guy a side likes to have the ball in his hand. But I do think there's a couple of concerns, and firstly, it's with the body. No doubt about that, of course. 2015, 2017, just 24 games between them with broken hand and ankle injuries and a couple others I'm sure that were just little niggles that I didn't read up on, but certainly a couple of major ones, that broken hand and a fairly severe ankle injury. So we clearly know that at his best he can score very well, but this is your classic case of, do we know if he can get back to that sort of a standard? It's very easy to look at a guy and look at his numbers and say, oh, he did it only 3 years ago. There's no reason he can't do it again. His body will be fine. He'll just do that again with midfield time. That's very optimistic, but sometimes you've got to watch a bloke and look a bit deeper. Is his body the same? Is he the same footballer anymore? Because sometimes you see guys have career best seasons and they never quite find that again. Sometimes the injury gets to them. They can't quite do the same things that they once did. They lose a yard of pace and that sort of thing. So I think it's definitely something we've got to consider. And he has had some fairly debilitating injuries. So that's certainly food for thought. And also that 2016 season where he did play every game but only averaged 86.7. I think some people might believe that maybe mentally he was on the way out. I know he's had a couple of issues discipline-wise. So maybe he wasn't in the best mental state to produce his best football. So, look, there's a couple of unknowns about Hanley. He's certainly shown a great ability to score well off a half-back line as well as through the midfield. So that is heartening. But a couple of points in terms of what's changed from his best seasons to last and a few drop-offs. And it does underline that a bit more midfield time wouldn't hurt. I mean, clearances dropped by 1.6. Disposals is the big one, dropped by 5.6 per game. This is comparing 2017 to 14, I believe. Tackles went down 1.9. Inside 50 is a big one. Just a damaging player went down 2.6 inside 50s per game. And rebound 50s went up last season. So that does underline that it was a more out of the back line role. and perhaps his best football and best scoring sees him more around the stoppage. At least some of those stats might suggest. So, a couple of things to be concerned about: the body, new environment. Is he the same player? Can he regather that form? He's at 430 odd K, extremely awkward. If we get the selection wrong, it's quite damaging. But in the positive view, I talk about can he regather that form, and I talk about sample sizes a lot. And you can look at players' seasons, and you can take a chunk of 4 weeks, you can take a chunk of 18 weeks, and work out an average within the average. And clearly, the 18 games, I know I was doing Billings the other day, I think he averaged 100 or something like that in the last 16 games, which proves he can do premium numbers over the journey. I'm going to give you just a 5-game sample from Hanley, albeit out of the 13 games he played, which does give us a little bit of hope and encouragement that he could find some form. Now, the last 5 games, he averaged 100.2, high score of 119, low score of 87. 3 out of those 5 were tons, I believe. So that's just a little grab that says, well, maybe he's still got it. Maybe he just had a good back end of the season. I'm not so sure, Sometimes you can manipulate the stats and which round you draw a conclusion at and where you started at, their best and best sort of scores, bookending what's been a reasonable patch of footy, and all of a sudden you make a good average look even better. But I do think that's relevant. If you're looking for any evidence that maybe he can still score, then the fact that he scored really well in the last little bit of the season is positive, because in a perfect world, a good pre-season, I know he had the broken hand issue, but gets back from that and can continue the on-field form that he had. So that's certainly something that does breathe a bit of positivity for the Hanley selection. And look, my verdict and my opinion, I must say, the more I looked into it, the more I liked the Hanley option. Reasonably priced, no Doherty, no Williams, a couple others that I'm not a massive fan of. I've got Laird, I've got Yo, I think most people will. I've got Lloyd at the moment, I quite enjoy the Lloyd option. Maybe a D4 option, potentially a D3 if you've got a lot of faith. And then I took a look at how Hanley could fit in to my side. And to put it simply, I think Hanley, the more I looked about it, he's more of that guy, if I can use an analogy. He's like that party you've got on a Saturday night that it's an option, but you're not exactly planning your day around it. If you can get there, it's great, but you're not going to schedule it as a must-have. You've got a few other things. You're hitting up this other party at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and if that's going well, then you're not leaving that one. But depending how it all falls, you might get to the Pearce Hanley party. That's how I sort of saw it. I looked at my side and I said, well, look, the main point where I could get him in is obviously Angus Brayshaw. Where do I find 110k? I've got 5 in the bank. Do I downgrade Nick Nat, who's a bit of concern surrounding him at the moment? Do I just downgrade a Paddy Dow or one of those 180 to 190 mids that's a placeholder to some extent at the moment? Do I downgrade him and find 75k? And look, after having a bit of a look, because I did try and fiddle around and see if he was a possibility, there were just too many guys that I was really confident in having in my side that I didn't want to part ways with. And the couple that I did, it probably didn't just marry up enough with finding the coin. And I guess when it all comes down to it, like with anything, if you want to do it, you'll find a way to do it. And I think I couldn't find the coin, but the fact is, if he was an absolute must-have and I felt he was an absolute lock, then of course I'd find a way to get the coin. So I think that's interesting. I mean, we talk a lot about that sort of stuff, but like with most things in life, if you really want to do it, you're not going to make excuses. You're going to find ways to actually work around a couple of hurdles, and you will do it. And I think Pearce Hanley, Jono's got a party at 7:30. Jono's a reasonable bloke. He doesn't have the best parties, but it's better than sitting at home doing nothing. So I'll go to Steve-O's party, see how that's rolling. If it's not kicking on, then look, we'll stay there, go to Jono's. But Steve-O's is certainly the one that we're going to kick off straight away. And if it's going well, we're going to be there all night. So it's certainly not a must-have to get the old Pearce Hanley party. That's about the way I can put it, because I just don't think he's an absolute lock, and I would like to see clearly a bit of JLT time and see that he is rolling through the midfield, which I'm sure he will. To what percentages will be interesting to see. Is he going to be a full-time midfielder? How's that going to work? And how well does he play the role? Because he's a guy that we haven't seen scoring football for a number of years. And injuries do affect people. They don't always just get over that injury and their body's the same as it was when they were 24, 25. So, perhaps we need to have a look at, is Pearce Hanley the same Pearce Hanley that we remember those beautiful highlights as a Brisbane Lion? Maybe he's not quite that same player physically, and that can be hard to pick up on, but we all know at certain times in players' careers that can be lost, certain areas of their physicality that made them so good, and sometimes it's only a slight drop-off, and their football nous and good ball use can get them so far, but the three-figure average is well gone. So I think that'll be pretty much at the forefront of my mind when I'm watching him, just seeing how he goes through that midfield, how he looks, what sort of a role is he playing through there, and that'll really answer the question. But at the moment, he's really going to have to convince me to pick him. It's not one of those ones where you just need a little bit of encouragement, just see a little bit, because I'm a big fan of this bloke. I'm going to need to see a bit, and he's going to have to work his way into my side. Certainly going to have to break into it rather than have it on a silver platter and it's his position to lose. So certainly going to have to show a bit through the pre-season. But give me your thoughts anyway, because he's a popular selection, or maybe not a popular selection, but a popular discussion at the moment is that sort of D3, D4 position, and Hanley, with the news playing midfield, has certainly put himself on the radar. So very interesting to take a look at. But thanks for tuning in once again. I'll be back very shortly, I'm sure. Hopefully you checked out my team update video the other day and had a few thoughts on that, and hopefully give a few thoughts on the Hanley selection and whether you're going with him or not. I'll be back for another player profile pretty soon. Got a massive list of requested players, I think upward of 20, so how many of those I can get through we'll see, but hopefully most. There's only 40 odd days left of SuperCoach, or of pre-season I should say, so certainly be after belting them out, certainly 5 or so a week, but I'll see how I can do it. I'll see how I go. But thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the subscribers getting on board. We've cracked 1,000. I'll probably pay that a little bit more tribute another time, but I'm stoked about that. So thanks again. I'll catch you soon. Cheers.